Please comment where you are watching in the world, and kindly subscribe to us. When Liam died, I told myself I had to keep moving. For Sam. That's how we ended up in the cottage, an old, slanted-roof place tucked near the woods, just outside of a town too small for maps but big enough for ghosts, apparently. It wasn't supposed to be haunted. The listing didn't say anything about that. It said quiet, rustic, charming. Nothing about flickering lights, phantom melodies, or my 6-year-old son waking up at 3 a.m. whispering to someone who wasn't there. I wanted a new start, a place where the grief didn't sit in every corner like cobwebs. But grief has a way of traveling with you. It follows like a shadow, and sometimes, if you listen closely, it speaks. It was late September when we moved in. The air still had a whisper of summer in it, though the leaves were already starting to dry at the edges. Sam was quiet but curious, asking about the attic, the well in the backyard, whether animals would come visit. He had Liam's curiosity. His voice, too. Same soft tone, same smile that made his eyes crease just a little at the corners. He'd stopped asking about Liam directly months ago, but he still waited in his way. You could see it in how he looked at the door some mornings, or the way he saved a seat on the porch swing beside him. I didn't have the heart to tell him waiting wouldn't change anything. The cottage was small, cozy. 2 bedrooms upstairs, creaky wood floors, a fireplace that hadn't been used in years. There was an old record player in the living room left by the previous owner. It didn't work, but it looked pretty, so I kept it. The first night was fine. Sam slept soundly, and I drank tea by the window, watching the trees shift like silent dancers in the breeze. I told myself it was peaceful. I told myself I could finally breathe. By the third night, the first thing happened. I was asleep when I heard humming. A melody, soft and slow, threading through the walls like smoke. I thought it was the wind at first, until I recognized the tune. Liam used to sing it to Sam. It was an old lullaby. Something from his childhood, something he'd carried across time and into ours. I hadn't heard it since the funeral. Not in real life, anyway. I crept down the stairs, heart ticking like a metronome. The house was dark, quiet, but the humming was clearer down here, low and steady like someone standing just around the corner. I turned the corner. Nothing. The record player was silent. Cold. Unplugged, as always. I told myself I'd imagined it. That maybe I'd fallen asleep thinking about Liam. That grief could echo if you let it. But then came Sam. The next morning at breakfast, he said it plainly, without even looking up from his cereal. Daddy sang to me last night. The spoon froze in my hand. I swallowed. What? He sang the moon song. The one about sleeping under stars. I stared at him. He was calm, like he was telling me what the weather was like. Honey, I said gently, he can't sing to us anymore, remember? Sam didn't flinch. Not out loud, he said. But I heard him. He was near the stairs. I said nothing else. Just cleared the dishes, smiling too tightly, my chest a knot of worry. It was just his imagination, I told myself. Kids dream strange things. Grief speaks in dreams. Nothing more. But the next night, I heard it again. This time, it started just after midnight. The same song. The same soft voice. I crept down, flashlight in hand. The light flickered, even though the batteries were fresh. Again, the record player was untouched. Again, nothing was there. I didn't sleep. And then came the shadows. Sam started talking to Liam. I'd catch him in his room, whispering to the corner. Sometimes I'd hear laughter, his, and another lower sound. A response. I told myself it was the wind again. Or the old pipes. But pipes don't laugh. Mary, our babysitter, asked me one afternoon if Sam was okay. He says funny things, she said. About his dad. Like he's still here. I told her it was normal. That grief is weird, and kids process it differently. But part of me knew better. It escalated the night I saw him. I had just finished cleaning up after dinner. Sam was already in bed, or so I thought. I turned off the kitchen light, and that's when I saw the silhouette in the hallway mirror. A man. Just for a second. He was tall, lean, the shape unmistakable. I turned, heart thundering, but no one was there. The hallway was empty. But the smell, God, the smell, hit me like a brick wall. Liam's cologne. The same sandalwood scent he wore on our wedding day. The bottle had been empty for months. I stood there for what felt like forever. Not moving. Not breathing. Just listening. Somewhere upstairs, a door creaked. I ran up, 2 stairs at a time. Sam was in bed. Eyes closed. Peaceful. But beside him, resting on the nightstand, was Liam's wedding band. It had been buried with him. I didn't sleep that night either. I considered calling a priest, or a therapist, or someone who could explain this in a way that didn't make me feel insane. But deep down, I knew what was happening. Grief was clawing through the cracks. Through time, through reason, through death itself. I tried ignoring it. I burned sage. I said Liam's name out loud. I begged him, whispered into the empty night. Please, if it's you, please let go. But he didn't. One night, I found Sam in the backyard, barefoot, talking to the air. Daddy says the trees remember, he said. They're older than time. He pointed at the woods. He says he lives there now. The next day, I locked every door and window. But it didn't matter. The song returned. It played louder, stronger. It wasn't just in my head now, it was in the house. It spilled through the vents. It came from the walls. And then, it played from the record player. I stood there, frozen, as the turntable spun. Slowly. Mechanically. No plug, no power. Just spinning. The needle dropped. The song played. I sobbed. I couldn't hold it anymore. Liam, I cried out. I love you, but you can't stay. Please. Let us go. The melody faltered. The room grew cold. The lights flickered. Then I felt it. A hand. On my shoulder. Warm. Familiar. I turned, and he was there. Just for a heartbeat. A flicker of a man I had loved more than life. His eyes were soft. Sad. And then he was gone. The house went silent. The record player stopped. The air warmed. Sam didn't mention him again after that. The ring disappeared. The cologne scent faded. The music never returned. Months passed. The leaves turned. Snow came. Life moved forward. And grief? Grief softened. Some nights I still sit by the window, watching the trees sway. I think of him then. Of what it meant for someone to love so deeply that even death couldn't silence him. But now, when I think of Liam, I hear nothing but silence. Peaceful. Restful. He let go. And in doing so, so did I. I never really believed in gut feelings. Not until that October. The night I saw Jason's face outside my aunt's house, hidden in the shadows, watching, I knew something had followed me out of the past. Something I hadn't outrun after all. Let me back up. It had been 3 months since I'd left town. After Jason and I broke up, if you could even call it that, I stopped feeling like a person. More like a shadow. A moving target. Every hallway at school felt like a trap. Every text notification sent my stomach into free fall. At first, I thought it was just a bad relationship. Teen drama. Something to survive and forget. But Jason wasn't a bad boyfriend. He was a dangerous one. The possessiveness started early, asking who I was texting, who I sat with at lunch. Then the guilt trips. Then the threats. When I tried to leave, he said he'd make my life a nightmare. Said if I didn't belong to him, I didn't belong to anyone. I believed him. So I ran. My mom sent me to live with Aunt Molly out in the suburbs of Bright Hill. Population barely enough to call it a town. It was quiet. Trees everywhere. Houses spaced far apart, each with oversized yards and swing sets nobody used anymore. My aunt worked late as a nurse and gave me space. For the first time in a year, I could breathe without checking over my shoulder. Until Jason showed up again. It started small. A blocked call. A hang-up. Then a DM from an unknown account with one word. Found you. I blocked it. But paranoia bloomed like mold. I checked locks twice. Started taking the long way to school. I told myself I was just being paranoid. That was until the Thursday I walked past my window and saw someone across the street. Standing still. Hands in his jacket. Head low. I couldn't see the face. But I knew the stance. The slight lean. The way the shoulders curled forward, like he was always in a fight with the world. Jason. I blinked, and he was gone. I told Aunt Molly I wasn't feeling well the next morning. She offered to stay home, but I lied and told her I was fine. I didn't want her involved. Didn't want to explain what Jason used to say, what he used to do when no one was looking. Instead, I told my best friend, Rachel. I swear it was him, I said in the school library, my voice barely a whisper. Did you call the cops? She asked, eyes wide. And say what? That I saw a guy who might be my ex standing by a tree? Still, if you're scared. I'm not scared, I said too quickly. She gave me a look. You're shaking. Rachel offered to stay over that weekend. So did 2 of our friends, Kayla and June. The 4 of us had been close since middle school, and they knew about Jason, at least parts of it. I didn't tell them everything. I never told anyone everything. Friday night felt normal at first. We watched cheesy horror movies and made popcorn, argued about who would survive a zombie apocalypse. I voted June. She was terrifying when cornered. It wasn't until after midnight that things changed. We were all half asleep in the living room when a loud knock echoed from the front door. We all sat up. Rachel paused the movie. That was the door, right? No one answered. Another knock. Louder this time. Then again, rapid, pounding like fists. I grabbed my phone and walked to the hallway window. My fingers trembled as I pulled back the curtain. Jason stood on the porch. He looked thinner, paler. His hoodie hung off him like it hadn't been washed in weeks. But the eyes, the way they locked onto mine the moment I peeked out, that hadn't changed. He saw me. I gasped and dropped the curtain. "Oh my God," I whispered. "It's him." "What?" Rachel said. "Who?" "It's Jason." The room exploded with panic. Kayla reached for her phone. June started turning off the lights. Rachel grabbed my wrist. "We have to hide." I nodded. "Upstairs." "My room." "Closet." We ran. We barely made it into the closet before we heard the glass shatter. Front window. Jason was inside. I clutched my phone in one hand, Rachel's wrist in the other. None of us said a word. We didn't breathe. Downstairs, we heard his footsteps. Slow. Measured. He was enjoying this. "Emmy," he called out. His voice was rough. "I know you're here." He was walking through the living room now. Over broken glass. "You thought you could hide? Thought I wouldn't find you." I covered my mouth. Rachel squeezed my arm so tight it went numb. We could hear him opening doors. One by one. Like he was checking them off a list. Kitchen. Bathroom. Guest room. Then the stairs creaked. Every step felt like thunder. I didn't think. I couldn't. I whispered to Rachel. "Call 911. Don't stop if he hears you." She nodded, her hand shaking as she dialed. Jason reached the second floor. Then he sneezed. It was stupid. Ordinary. A sound like any other. And somehow, I panicked. I whispered, "Bless you." Silence. I could feel Rachel's eyes widen. Then Jason laughed. From outside the door, he said softly, "Thanks, Emmy." The closet door burst open. He reached for me, and for a second I froze. But then something in me snapped. I didn't want to be afraid anymore. As his hand grabbed my shoulder, I ducked and rammed my elbow into his ribs. He grunted. I kicked, hard, right where it counted. He dropped to his knees, howling. Rachel screamed and ran for the hallway. I grabbed the nearest thing I could find, a curling iron, and swung it at his head. He stumbled back, dazed. I bolted. Downstairs. Out the door. Barefoot. Rachel was ahead of me, pounding on a neighbor's door. By the time I got there, she was sobbing and yelling that someone had broken in. The porch light flicked on, and an older woman opened the door. She took one look at us and let us in. The police came fast. They searched the house. Jason was gone. Rachel and I gave our statements through tears. I tried not to shake. Tried not to cry until the officers left. But when they asked if I wanted to press charges, I said yes. The next morning, I moved out of Aunt Molly's house. I moved out of the shadows, too. 2 years later. Sometimes I still have dreams where I'm stuck in that closet, where I say bless you, and everything falls apart again. But then I wake up, and I'm not that girl anymore. Jason was arrested a week after the break-in. Someone spotted him sleeping behind a gas station. He's serving 5 years for trespassing, breaking and entering, and attempted assault. Rachel still jokes about my bless you moment. Says it's the most Emmy thing I could have done, polite to a fault, even mid-break-in. I laugh now. Back then, I wanted to disappear. But I didn't. I stood up. I fought back. And now I don't whisper anymore. Not when I talk about what happened. Not when I talk about who I used to be. There's silence on Cedar Lane these days. But it's not fear anymore. It's peace. I wasn't always afraid of fire. In fact, I used to think I understood it. I spent 11 years as a firefighter, 10 of those in Station 14, right in the middle of Briar Street, a small artery in the city's southern district. We weren't the busiest station, but we were tight. Family. That's how everyone describes it, and for once, the word fit. We trained together, ate together, watched each other's backs through the worst of it. Birthdays, blizzards, blackouts, we did it all. But I stopped sleeping after what happened last summer. And eventually, I stopped going back altogether. It started with a call. Like everything does. It was July 18th, 2:41 a.m. I remember the exact time because I'd just fallen asleep, still sweaty from the brutal heat wave. The tone came through the speaker. House fire. Abandoned complex on the corner of Briar and Ninth. Second time in a month that building had lit up. Homeless camp, maybe? Tommy had mumbled as we suited up. Or just kids lighting shit for TikTok. We laughed, but there was an edge to it. Everyone in the neighborhood knew the building. Once a textile factory, now just another skeleton of the city's past. It was supposed to be condemned, but permits moved slow, and chain-link fences weren't enough to keep curious people out. I rode with Arturo, our captain. Solid guy, calm under pressure. Never lost his head in a burn. As we pulled up, I saw the flames reaching out of the top floor windows like fingers. It looked alive. I didn't like it. We got to work. Hose lines, ladders, interior checks. The usual. The heat hit hard as we entered through the side. You never really get used to that first wall of fire, like the air itself is trying to peel your skin off. But this wasn't my first time. I moved on instinct, eyes sweeping the black, waiting for signs of life or collapse. Main beams cracked. I heard Arturo call. Let's not get cozy. I moved toward the stairwell, my boots crunching on debris. The second floor was the danger zone. That's where the fire had bloomed the first time. Supposedly cleaned out. It wasn't. As I made my way up, I heard something. A voice. Faint. Choking. Help. I froze. Pulled my radio. Cap, I've got a voice, top of the stairs. Someone's in here. I didn't wait. I followed the sound. It was a woman. Mid-30s maybe. Wedged between collapsed floor beams, clutching something wrapped in a blanket. Eyes wide with terror. My baby, she gasped. Please. I moved fast. Checked the baby first. It was a doll. Melted at the edges. Delusional or desperate? Maybe both. No one else here, I said, trying to lift her. But something felt wrong. The room was warping. The walls shimmered. Then I saw the eyes behind her. Not hers. Behind her. Eyes glowing, set in a face half obscured by smoke. Watching. Smiling. I blinked. Gone. The roof gave way with a sound like a gunshot. I grabbed the woman and dove sideways as fire roared down from above. I felt a beam clip my shoulder, and we hit the ground hard. My radio cracked against concrete, cutting off. We were trapped. The woman was screaming now, scratching at the floor, screaming for her baby, even as I tried to drag her back. And behind us, footsteps. Slow. Crunching glass. I turned, thinking maybe it was Arturo. Maybe backup had found us. But no one was there. Only heat. Flame. And a whisper in my ear that didn't belong to anything alive. It said my name. Just my name. I blacked out before they pulled me out. The hospital said dehydration. Smoke inhalation. Minor concussion. But I knew what I saw. The woman didn't make it. They found her, still clutching the melted doll, eyes open like glass marbles. I didn't sleep for 2 nights. On the third, I woke to the smell of smoke in my apartment. I leapt out of bed, heart pounding, only to find nothing. No smoke. No alarms. No signs of fire. But I could still smell it. For hours. I went back to work 2 weeks later. I lasted 1 shift. We got called to another structure fire, an old shed behind a school. Small. Contained. But when I stepped out of the truck, I heard it again. The whisper. Right in my ear. Like it had followed me. I froze. Arturo had to yell 3 times before I snapped out of it. I helped with the hose, kept my eyes on the flames, but the heat felt different now. Like it knew me. Like it was watching. That night, I told Arturo I needed time off. He said okay. Didn't ask questions. I think he knew. I haven't worn the gear since. Some nights, I wake up drenched in sweat. I hear glass breaking, walls groaning, names whispered like prayers. Always mine. And the eyes. They come back, glowing through the smoke. I tried talking to someone, station therapist, then a private one. They said trauma shows itself in strange ways. But I don't think what I saw in that building was trauma. It was something else. It was waiting. And when I went looking for it, it found me. 6 months later, I sold my apartment and moved inland. Took a desk job, something quiet. I still see fire on the news sometimes. My fingers twitch. Old habits. When we signed the lease on the apartment in Unit 3A, I remember saying to my wife, "This place finally feels quiet." I didn't know how wrong I'd be. It was our 5th move in 6 years, the result of both our jobs shuffling us around constantly. At some point, you stop unpacking all the boxes. Just the essentials. The rest stays sealed, waiting for the next zip code. This place, a 6-unit walk-up just outside of Santa Rosa, seemed different. Older building, sure, but solid. Brick. We had good light, a working fireplace, and a view of the small alley below where cats liked to sleep on warm concrete. Our neighbors seemed fine, distant but polite. There was an elderly couple on the first floor, a younger guy who played acoustic guitar, just enough to be charming but not annoying, and then there was the man in apartment 3B. He introduced himself as Ben. Ben was off. Hard to explain exactly. He wasn't rude. Not even creepy. Just always a half-second behind in conversations, like he was translating the world as it happened. His eyes stayed on you too long. When we said hello, he said, "Okay." Harmless. At first. The first strange thing happened about 3 weeks after we moved in. I was brushing my teeth late one night when I noticed a hole in the wall behind our bathroom mirror. Small, about the size of a nickel. I wouldn't have seen it if the steam hadn't cleared just right. Curious, I got a flashlight and peered inside. Empty space. Drywall, studs, and further in another hole. It was looking into the next apartment. Directly into the bathroom. 3B. I stepped back slowly. I didn't tell my wife right away. I just patched it up with duct tape and foam, promising myself I'd mention it if something else happened. Something else did. About 2 nights later, we were watching TV when we heard footsteps above us. Except, there was no apartment above us. We were on the top floor. They continued for several minutes, slow and deliberate. Then stopped. We looked at each other but said nothing. Try to laugh it off. Buildings settle. Old pipes. The usual excuses. Until my wife found her toothbrush wet. She swore she hadn't used it. I knew I hadn't. We joked that maybe we had a ghost with dental hygiene. But that night, she couldn't sleep. "I feel like someone's watching," she whispered in the dark. I held her hand until she drifted off. I didn't. The next morning, I saw Ben in the hallway. He stared at me, smiled faintly, and said, "You sleep very still." I blinked. "Excuse me?" He didn't repeat it. Just turned and went inside. That's when I started checking everything. The windows. The closets. The attic hatch. I installed a camera in the living room that fed to an old phone I kept in my sock drawer. That night, while we were out getting groceries, the camera pinged me. Motion detected. I opened the app. Nothing. But when I got home, the front door was unlocked. I told the landlord. He shrugged. "Ben's a little eccentric," he said. "Been here forever. Doesn't cause trouble." "He's watching us," I said. "I'm serious. He's inside our place when we're not home." "I'll talk to him," the landlord promised. 2 days later, I found the foam plug over the hole ripped out. Inside it, a folded scrap of paper. "I like your wife's voice." We moved out 2 weeks later, but we didn't leave the building. Because moving again that fast wasn't possible. Not financially, not logistically. We arranged to stay in the first-floor unit the elderly couple had vacated unexpectedly. The landlord was happy to shuffle us. "Least I can do," he said. We locked every door that night. But Ben wasn't done. The nightmares started soon after. At least, that's how it felt at first. Footsteps. Doors creaking. My wife swore she saw him in the window once, watching from the fire escape. I set up more cameras. Changed the locks. I even installed a wedge alarm under our door. Then one night around 3:30 a.m., we woke to a scraping noise in the walls. I sat up in bed. It was rhythmic. Slow. I grabbed a flashlight and followed the sound to the small hallway closet. Inside was the old laundry chute, boarded up long ago. But now the board was loose. I shined my light down it and froze. There were eyes staring up. We called the police. They searched 3B, but Ben wasn't home. They found journals, sketches, notes, descriptions of us, of my wife, timelines of when we left the house, diagrams of our apartment's layout. Surveillance photos that had to have been taken from inside. They issued a warrant, but Ben was gone. For days. We packed everything, ready to leave. But before we could, Ben came back. It was a Sunday evening. The fire alarm went off in the building. We stepped into the hallway and saw smoke, real smoke, curling from under the door of 3B. I pounded on it. No answer. The other tenants poured out. Someone called 911. Just before the fire trucks arrived, the door burst open. Ben stood there, soot-streaked, shirtless, grinning. "You broke the rules," he hissed at me. Then he held something up. It was one of our framed photos. One we hadn't seen in weeks. The one that had gone missing. He dropped it. The glass shattered. Then he pulled a knife. It happened fast. Police tackled him. He screamed the whole time. "You don't understand," he wailed. "They moved into my story. They're not real. They're not real." They sedated him on the sidewalk. Took him away. I watched the ambulance go, my heart in my throat. We moved out that week. We moved out of the state. I don't remember packing. Just driving. Ben was committed. The building was inspected and condemned. We started over in Oregon. New names on the mailbox. Different paint on the walls. But every now and then, I hear a noise I can't explain. A footstep. A knock. A whisper in the wall. I turn on every light. I walk the perimeter. Then I remember what he said, right before they sedated him. "You sleep very still." It started with a stupid bet, like most bad ideas do. I was 19, a sophomore at Hawthorne University, a school best known for two things: its ancient, crumbling architecture and the legend of the bell tower. Everyone on campus had heard the stories. How the bell tolls once a year at midnight, even though no one's touched it in over a century. How anyone who spends a full night inside the tower ends up different. Some say it's haunted. Others say it's cursed. Most say it's just a story to keep freshmen from doing anything dumb. But when my roommate Connor dared me to spend the night in there, alone, something in me said yes before my brain caught up. I don't know why. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was the way everyone turned to me when he said it, like I wouldn't do it. Like I was too scared. That's the thing about dares. You don't think about ghosts until the dark is already around you. The bell tower sits on the edge of campus, behind the old chapel, mostly forgotten except during orientation tours and Halloween. It's sealed most of the year, but Connor had a friend in maintenance. One favor later, I had the key. The bet was simple: stay from 11 p.m. to sunrise. No phone, no flashlight. Just me and a candle. Easy, I told myself. By 10:45, I was already climbing the narrow, stone steps. They spiraled tightly, the air growing colder with each turn. I lit the candle and watched the shadows shift against the walls, warping the old carvings and half-erased graffiti. The room at the top was larger than I expected: dusty wooden floorboards, broken furniture stacked in corners, and the massive bronze bell looming overhead. It looked older than the building itself, heavy and still, coated in grime and time. I sat in the center of the room and waited. At first, it was fine. Just quiet. Peaceful almost. Then the silence started to press in. At 12 a.m. on the dot, the bell tolled. Once. Loud and low. I nearly jumped out of my skin. No one was up there but me. I checked. Twice. The mechanism hadn't moved. The rope was rotted through. But the sound had been real. It had shaken the floor. After that, things got worse. The temperature dropped. My candle flickered violently, though there was no wind. I started hearing things: low footsteps on the stairs, whispers under the bell, soft breaths behind me. I turned around 100 times. Each time, nothing was there. I started talking to myself. Anything to break the silence. That's when I noticed the carvings. Dozens of names, etched along the base of the walls. Some fresh, some faded. One of them was mine. Spelled exactly how I sign it. Max Dalton. October 5th. I hadn't carved it. I pulled my phone out to check the date. October 5th. I hadn't told anyone I was going tonight. At around 1:30 a.m., I heard the stairs creak again. Heavier now. Like boots. I stood up, heart pounding. "Connor?" I called. Nothing. Not funny, man. Seriously. Silence. I moved toward the stairwell and saw it. A figure. Not quite shadow. Not quite flesh. Tall. Distorted. Standing on the last step. Watching me. It didn't move. Didn't breathe. It just stared. I blinked. And it was gone. I ran to the door. It was locked. I had the key. I jammed it in, twisted. Nothing. The door wouldn't budge. The candle went out. The shadows grew long. And then I heard the bell again. But this time, it wasn't from above. It was behind me. I turned slowly. The bell was swinging. No rope. No wind. Just moving. I heard a voice then. Right in my ear. "You're not the first." I don't remember falling asleep. But when I woke up, the sun was rising through the tower windows. Everything was still. The bell was motionless. The door opened easily. I stumbled down the steps and out into the grass, shaking, pale. Connor was waiting on a bench with 2 coffees. "Dude," he said, standing up. "You look like death." I didn't answer. Just walked past him, all the way back to the dorm. For days, I didn't speak about it, didn't sleep much either. Until a week later, Connor barged into the room, holding a photo. "Bro, check this out," he said, tossing it on my bed. It was an old black and white from the campus archive. A group of students in front of the bell tower. From the 1940s. There were names written on the back. I recognized some of them. And one name stood out. Max Dalton. My name. Same spelling. Same hairline. I didn't say anything. Just turned the photo face down and walked away. I still go to school here. People always say you don't see it coming. They're right. 1 second, I was high on the energy of a championship win, walking through downtown, grinning like an idiot in my Rangers jersey. And the next, I was on the pavement, gasping, bleeding, getting the life kicked out of me by strangers I never saw coming. I still don't know what hurt worse, the physical pain, or how fast joy turned into terror. It was supposed to be one of the best nights of my life. It almost became my last. The Rangers had pulled off an insane overtime win, and the Garden exploded. Everyone was screaming, chanting, hugging strangers. The air felt electric. Even though I was alone, none of my friends care about hockey. I didn't feel lonely. That's the magic of sports, right? For 3 hours, you're part of something. I stayed late after the game, soaking it all in. Snapped a few pictures. Laughed with a guy in a Marc Messier jersey at the urinals. Normal post-game bliss. By the time I made it outside, the crowd had thinned. I decided to walk off the adrenaline before getting to my car, which I'd parked 6 blocks away on a quiet street, like an idiot. Still buzzing, I turned off the main avenue and ducked into the side streets. The city was quieter here, just the faint echo of traffic and streetlights humming overhead. It was 11:46 p.m. I looked up at a blinking neon sign that read, "Open 24 hours," over a corner deli. And then I felt something cover my face. A towel? A shirt? I couldn't tell. It smelled like sweat and smoke. Before I could react, something hard smashed into my ribs. Pain exploded through my side, and I went down like a tree. My head bounced off the sidewalk. Dazed, I tried to crawl, but the kicks came fast and everywhere. My back, my legs, my stomach. Hands grabbed at my pockets. I tried to yell, but the wind had been kicked out of me. I heard them laughing. 3 voices. Maybe 4. They were speaking fast, a mix of English and something else, maybe Spanish? It was a blur. One guy called me Jersey Boy. Another said, "Get the phone too." I felt my wallet disappear. My keys. Something was yanked off my wrist, the bracelet my sister gave me last Christmas. They left me gasping on the ground like trash. I don't remember how long I lay there. A minute? 10? Eventually, I forced myself onto one elbow. My mouth tasted like metal. My face was sticky. I reached into my jacket pocket. Somehow, miraculously, my phone was still there. I fumbled for the emergency shortcut, pressing the side button 5 times. 911 answered instantly. "Help," I croaked. I was attacked. Robbed. Bleeding. They got my location. Told me to stay awake. Stay calm. I couldn't do either. The paramedics found me sitting against a wall, holding my side. I was shivering uncontrollably, even though it wasn't cold. One EMT gently asked if I could walk. I nodded. Barely. They took me to Mount Sinai. I had 2 cracked ribs, a mild concussion, and a gash over my right eye that needed 6 stitches. The doctor said, "You're lucky." I didn't feel lucky. The next morning, I filed a police report. They asked me for descriptions. I had almost nothing. Hoodies. Masks. One guy wore red sneakers, that's all I remembered. They told me muggings had been increasing in that area. Same group hitting different blocks. I was just another victim. It didn't feel just. It felt personal. My wrists still ached from where they grabbed me. My ribs burned every time I moved. I didn't tell anyone right away. Not my parents. Not my sister. I just went home, crawled into bed, and stared at the ceiling for hours. 3 days later, I broke down. It hit me at the grocery store. I was reaching for a box of cereal when someone walked too close behind me. Their jacket brushed mine. I dropped everything and bolted out the exit. I sat in my car, heart racing, fists clenched, for 20 minutes. I realized then, it wasn't just pain I was carrying. It was fear. Over the next few weeks, the bruises faded. But I wasn't the same. I looked over my shoulder constantly. Flinched at loud noises. Avoided quiet streets and didn't go out after dark. I hated that they had taken more than my wallet. They had taken my sense of safety. So I decided to take something back. I started going to therapy. told the whole story. My therapist, Carla, didn't interrupt or pity me. She just listened. Then she said something simple that stuck with me. You didn't lose. You survived. I hated how much I needed to hear that. Over the next few months, I learned how trauma works. How it doesn't follow a clean timeline. How healing isn't about forgetting, it's about reclaiming. I got a security camera for my house. Took a self-defense course. I even went back to MSG one night in January, sat in the same seat, and watched the Rangers lose in a shootout. It didn't matter. I was there. I was back. They never caught the guys who jumped me. Maybe they never will. But I did get one small win. 3 weeks ago the police called. Someone tried to use my credit card at a pawn shop in Queens. The owner took a photo of the ID they used. It was fake, but it was a face. They asked if I wanted to press charges if they found them. I said yes, not because I want revenge, but because I want the next person they target to walk home safe. I still wear my Rangers jersey, and when people ask what happened to the scar above my eye, I don't lie. I tell them, because silence doesn't help anyone, and survival, I've learned, isn't something you hide. It's something you wear, proudly. I used to love the sirens. The sound of them was like a mission bell. Purpose, urgency, a reminder that someone needed help and that I had the tools and training to give it. But now I hear them, and all I feel is heat in my chest, tightness in my throat, a countdown that always ends the same way, with me on my back, staring up at a sky I thought I'd never see again. It happened last year, mid-June. Hot enough to bake the sidewalks. I was pulling a 12-hour shift as a paramedic in downtown Phoenix. Nothing too unusual that day. A heart attack at a coffee shop, a dehydrated tourist, an elderly woman who fainted on the light rail. Then dispatch pinged us with a call. Possible overdose. Male 30s. Abandoned parking lot behind a motel on 16th and Van Buren. Pidi en route. My partner, Dana, looked over at me. You good? Let's go, I said. We pulled up within 6 minutes. The lot was empty except for a rusty old SUV parked near the back. Windows tinted so dark it was like staring into space. The guy was already out cold when we found him, slumped in the passenger seat, barely breathing. Needle still in his arm. Dana prepped the Narcan. I reached in to stabilize his airway. That's when the driver's door flew open. I didn't even see the guy until he was inches from me. Skinny mid-30s, wild eyes, meth panic. Back off, he screamed, waving a tire iron. Dana yelled for help on the radio. I raised my hands. We're here to help him, man. That's it. Just back up. He shoved me. Then he jumped into the driver's seat. Don't, I started to say. But the car was already moving. Fust. Problem was, I was halfway in. The next few seconds are stitched together in flashes. My legs trailing outside the door. My arms wrapped around the front seat. The SUV swerving hard as the driver screamed and hit the gas. Dana's voice yelling my name behind us. We hit a curb, and my body slammed into the dashboard. I saw blood. I think it was mine. We were going maybe 40 miles per hour when I made the decision. I had to get out. I twisted sideways, trying to push off the seat, but the driver grabbed my vest. You're part of this, he screamed. They sent you. His breath reeked. His grip was steel. I hit him. He hit back. Somehow I got free, half fell, half threw myself out of the SUV. I don't remember hitting the pavement. I woke up to blue sky and pain. My shoulder felt like it had shattered. My knees were torn open. Blood soaked through the fabric of my pants. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. Dana was beside me, hands on my chest, talking too fast. Stay with me, stay with me, stay. Then the sirens came. I couldn't stand them. The driver got caught 2 blocks later. Stole another car. Tried to run. Took a taser to the back and went down screaming about voices and injections. Turned out he'd been on a 3-day binge. Paranoid. Thought we were undercover agents trying to poison him. He'd never even met the man in the passenger seat. Just picked him up for drugs. The overdose victim survived. I barely did. Torn ligaments. Dislocated shoulder. 5 cracked ribs. 2 surgeries. 4 months of physical therapy. The department was supportive at first. Sent flowers. Cards. Came to the hospital. But once the paperwork cleared and the media moved on, so did they. Take your time, they said. But time didn't fix what broke. I started having dreams. I was back in the SUV. Trapped. But this time I didn't jump out. This time, I stayed in until the crash. Until the fire. until the screaming stopped. I tried to go back to work. Made it one day. Then I heard the sirens again. Not the good kind, the kind that echoes off your skull and drags your worst memories to the surface. I had a panic attack in the locker room. Sat on the floor for 20 minutes, shaking like a leaf. That night, I told my supervisor I couldn't do it. Not anymore. I quit. People said I was brave. They didn't see me cry in the shower. Didn't see the way I jumped at shadows. How I flinched every time I heard tires screech. What they did see was the article in the paper. Paramedic injured in wild chase recovers, steps away from field. They called it inspirational. But I didn't feel inspired. I felt broken. Then something changed. I got a letter. It was from the man we saved. The overdose guy. His name was Matthew. He was 33. Had a daughter. Got clean after that day. Enrolled in a recovery program. He thanked me. Said my injuries bought him a second chance. Said he'd never forget me. Neither will I. It's been over a year now. I haven't gone back to the field. But I teach at the academy. Train new EMTs. Talk to them about trauma, about safety, about how being brave isn't the same as being reckless. I still have the vest I wore that day. Torn and stained, tucked away in my closet. Every now and then I take it out. Touch the rip near the collar where he grabbed me. Remind myself that I didn't die. And more importantly, that I'm still helping people. Just under a different kind of siren. I've walked through Port Authority more times than I can count, and I've always hated it. Too many people. Too many smells. Too many stories you don't want to look at for too long. But that night it wasn't crowded. It was empty, and that made everything worse. It was a Wednesday, around 11:40 p.m., and the Knicks had just blown a late lead again. Still, the game was electric. Being in the Garden, hearing the fans roar like a single living organism, it never gets old. I left with a buzz in my chest. Not alcohol, adrenaline. The kind that makes you believe in comebacks, even after the scoreboard says otherwise. From the Garden, I took the one train to Times Square. One stop. A few minutes of mindless scrolling. Nothing unusual. From there, I made my way through the underground corridors toward Port Authority. And that's when it hit me, the absence. No footsteps. No murmurs. No buses pulling out. Just silence. Port Authority was never silent. The terminal was lit up like usual, flickering fluorescents and tired LED signs. But not a single soul was in sight. No travelers, no vendors, no security. The longer I walked, the quieter it seemed to get. The buzz of the city faded behind me like someone had turned the volume down. I kept moving. I figured maybe I'd taken a wrong turn. Or construction had closed part of the main floor. Something. But then I heard it. A low, steady dragging sound behind me. Not footsteps. Dragging. I froze. I turned around. Nothing. I scanned the long hallway of vending machines and cracked tile. No movement. No hecho. No reason for my heart to be pounding like it was. I told myself I was being paranoid. That it had been a long day. That the Knicks losing had thrown my rhythm off. I kept walking. Another sound. This time quicker. Footsteps. Then 3 distinct shadows passed across the floor behind me. I turned again. Still no one there. I reached for my phone to check the terminal map. Dead. Black screen. Battery full when I left MSG. I pressed the power button 5 times. Emergency SOS. Nothing. I started walking faster. At the far end of the hallway, a man stepped out from around a corner. Then another. And then a third. 3 of them. Hooded. Still. Blocking my exit. I stopped in my tracks. Hey, I called, trying to keep my voice steady. Can you tell me where? The one on the left raised his hand. Held up my wallet. I never felt it leave my pocket. Panic hit me like a wave. I took 1 step back and slipped. Something slick beneath my foot. A dark stain. Not water. They were already moving. Fast. I tried to scream, but my voice caught in my throat. One of them slammed into me shoulder first, sending me crashing to the floor. Then came the kicks. Not wild, precise. Back, ribs, stomach. I curled up, trying to protect my head. Another kick to the spine made everything go white. They didn't speak. No threats. No insults. Just silence. It didn't last long, 15 seconds maybe. But it felt endless. Then suddenly they stopped. One of them leaned in close. I could smell cigarettes and copper on his breath. He whispered something I'll never forget. She's almost here. And then they were gone. No footsteps. Just gone. I don't know how long I lay there. Eventually, I forced myself up. Every movement burned. My vision swam. That's when I saw it, a small pocket knife lying a few feet away. Old. Worn. Wooden handle, stained with something dark. Had they dropped it? Or left it? My hands shook as I reached for it. Before I could decide what to do, I heard a voice behind me. Not one of theirs. A woman's voice. Clear. Calm. You should not have stayed this late. I turned. A woman stood by the information desk. Mid-30s. Pale face. Perfect posture. She wore a Port Authority security jacket, but there was no name badge. No radio. Her eyes didn't blink. What? Who are you? I managed. She didn't answer. Just pointed behind me. I turned. The lights were off now. The hallway was gone. Only blackness remained. The next thing I remember is waking up in a hospital bed. A police officer sat beside me. You're lucky, he said. I'd been found near a side exit of Port Authority. Semi-conscious. Beaten. No wallet. No ID. They ran facial recognition off a subway camera. I asked about the woman. The security officer. He frowned. There was no woman. No one working that shift. Whole floor's been under renovation. But, he held up a hand. Don't push yourself. Trauma makes the mind see strange things. Maybe he's right. But maybe not. 2 weeks later, I went back. Couldn't help it. Broad daylight. Thousands of people. Normal noise. I found the hallway. The one I walked down. It wasn't there. Just a bricked-up wall and a faded plaque that said, "Closed since 1997, West Wing Terminal 3. I asked a janitor about it. Older guy, thick accent. He looked at me like I'd told him I saw a ghost. You don't go down that hallway, he muttered. Not if you want to come back right. I tried to laugh. But I didn't. I moved into the house at the edge of Andale on a Wednesday, the kind of gray, drizzling day where everything feels a little too quiet. The movers left around noon, and I stood in the kitchen afterward, surrounded by cardboard boxes and that hollow emptiness houses have before they become homes. The place had been cheap, suspiciously cheap, but at the time I didn't care. I just needed somewhere to go, somewhere that wasn't the apartment where I'd last spoken to Owen, where the voicemail from the hospital still sat in my inbox, never to be listened to again. Owen was my older brother. Grew up fearless, reckless, always chasing speed. He was the one who taught me to ride a bike, who let me cheat off his math homework, who bought me my first beer and laughed when I hated it. He was also the one who died in a motorcycle crash last fall, and I hadn't been able to forgive him since. The house was a small, L-shaped single story with wooden floors that creaked like they had a memory of every step taken. It sat back from the road, framed by leafless trees and silence. There were 3 bedrooms, 1 bath, and a laundry closet. It was just me now, so I didn't need more. The hallway stretched out from the living room like a spine, rooms branching off it like ribs. My bedroom was halfway down. At the very end was a door I figured led to the guest room. I barely noticed it on the first day, just another detail in a place I hadn't begun to care about yet. But the second night I was there, I realized something strange. That door didn't open. It wasn't locked. It didn't have a keyhole. The knob just didn't turn. I twisted it, pushed, even gave it a light shoulder check. Nothing. It rattled, loosened the socket, but didn't budge. I told myself it was probably painted shut. Old houses had quirks. Still, something about the door unsettled me. It looked wrong. Taller than the others. Set deeper into the wall. And the trim didn't match. Where the other doors had thin pine molding, this one had thick, dark wood that looked out of place. Almost like it had been added later. I let it go. Or I tried to. The next night, I woke up to a sound coming from the hallway. 3 knocks. A pause. 2 knocks. Then silence. I sat up in bed, heart suddenly hammering. That pattern, 3 pause 2, was something only one other person knew. Owen and I used it when we were kids, knocking on our shared wall, when we wanted to talk at night without getting in trouble. It meant you up, or you okay, or sometimes just I'm here. I hadn't heard it since I was 17. I grabbed my phone. 2:14 a.m. I got out of bed and padded slowly down the hallway. The hardwood felt colder than usual under my feet. The door at the end stood still, same as ever. I stood in front of it, listening. Nothing. Hello, I said softly. No response. I pressed my hand to the door. It was cold. Not just unheated, cold like a stone left out overnight. I could feel the chill radiating through my palm. I waited. Nothing. After a minute, I turned back toward bed, telling myself it was grief, it was fatigue, it was stress. But when I woke the next morning, the knocking replayed in my mind like a song I couldn't stop humming. 3. Pause. 2. I tried to work. Unpack some boxes. Set up my desk. Tried to write. But every so often, my eyes would drift to the hallway. To the door. I started testing it daily. Still wouldn't open. One evening, I tried to ignore it, focusing on a movie, letting the noise drown out the tension building in my chest. I must have dozed off because I woke to darkness and quiet. I sat up groggily and immediately smelled something strange. Oil. Rubber. Faint, but unmistakable. The garage. Owen's garage. It was the smell that used to cling to his jackets, to the seat of his bike when I dared ride it. I hadn't smelled it in years. I followed it down the hallway, slowly, breath-catching. It was strongest near the door. I bent down and pressed my nose against the frame. Closed my eyes. Definitely gas. And metal. Maybe burnt leather. When I opened my eyes, I noticed something else. On the wall beside the door, faint scratches, like someone had once tried to pry it open. Long vertical lines. Some shallow, others deeper. The kind you don't see unless you're looking for them. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, jumping at every groan the house made. And then, just past 3 a.m., the smell returned. Stronger this time. And the knock came again. 3. Pause. 2. Followed by a sound I hadn't heard in years. A low, dry cough. Owen's cough, when he'd chain-smoked in college. I whispered, "Owen?" Silence. I wanted to open the door. I wanted to punch through the wood and drag out whatever part of him might be behind it. But I stayed in bed. Frozen. When dawn came, I finally slept. I dreamt I was standing in the hallway, staring at the door. It was open in the dream. Just a few inches. Inside, I could see a man sitting on a wooden chair, facing the corner. He didn't move. Didn't speak. But I knew it was Owen. And in the dream, I couldn't cross the threshold. My feet wouldn't move. I woke up gasping. After that, the house changed. Lights flickered. My keys vanished and reappeared in strange places. One night, I came home to find all the framed photos turned face down. And still the door stayed shut. Until one evening, after a particularly long day, I came down the hallway and saw it cracked open. Just slightly. But enough to see the darkness inside. I should have called someone. Left. Done anything other than what I did. But I pushed it open. The hinges didn't creak. The room was bare, 4 walls, splintered floorboards, and in the center, Owen's motorcycle helmet. I hadn't seen it since the crash. It looked exactly the same. Scratched on the left side. Still had the faded sticker I'd given him, a cartoon skull with a wrench through it. Beside the helmet sat a wooden chair, turned to face the corner. And taped to the backrest was a photograph. I stepped forward and peeled it off. It was me and Owen, taken at a bar on his last birthday. He had cake on his face, and I was flipping him off while laughing. I don't remember the photo being taken. I turned it over. No writing. No date. But the back smelled faintly of smoke. Behind me, the door slammed shut. The room dimmed. The temperature dropped. And then a whisper. "You left me." I spun, heart slamming against my ribs. No one there. Just the helmet. The chair. And the sensation of breath, right at the back of my neck. "You were supposed to come with me." I staggered back. My knees hit the floor. The photo crumpled in my hand. The air thickened, like the walls were breathing. And then silence. I don't remember getting out. I woke up the next morning in the hallway, lying on the hardwood floor. The door was shut again. But this time, when I touched the knob, it turned. Inside, nothing. No helmet. No chair. No photo. Just empty space and peeling paint. But the photo was still in my hand. I didn't know what to do with it. So I kept it. That afternoon, I called my mom. We hadn't spoken since the funeral. We cried, laughed, talked about Owen, about how angry we both were, about how unfair it felt. I told her I was sorry. She said, "I'm glad you called." I was waiting, and for the first time in a long time, I felt something shift. Like I was breathing again. Like I wasn't trapped in that room anymore. The next morning, the door at the end of the hall was gone. In its place was a wall. Seamless. Painted to match. I stood there for a long time, staring at where it used to be. I don't know what happened. Not really. Maybe it was grief. Or guilt. Or something else I'll never understand. But sometimes, late at night, when the house settles and the wind hums through the trees, I still hear it. 3 knocks. Pause. 2. And I knock back. Not because I want the door to open again, but because I want him to know I remember, and that I'm still here. It started the morning after I turned 30. I got out of bed, groggy and slow, the taste of wine still on my tongue from the night before, and I shuffled into the bathroom to brush my teeth. I flicked on the light, looked into the mirror, and froze. It wasn't anything huge. Just off. My face looked the same. But the way it looked back at me, there was something wrong. My eyes, specifically. Not the color or the shape, but the focus, the intensity. Like they weren't following my thoughts anymore. Like I was the one being observed. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, laughed it off. Sleep deprivation. Hangover. 30. I didn't think about it again until the next morning, when it happened again. Same feeling. Like I was catching the end of a glance that wasn't mine. I moved my hand. The reflection moved too. But slower. That got me. Because that's not how mirrors work. I started watching myself closer after that. I didn't say anything to anyone. Not at first. You don't exactly call up your best friend and say, "Hey, does your reflection ever feel like someone else?" But I started noticing other things. Like the way the mirror fogged up differently. I'd wipe it clean after a shower and see handprints. Not where my hands had been, but lower. Like someone much smaller had touched the glass from the inside. At night, I'd glance at the hall mirror and catch my own face a second too late. I'd already turned my head, but the reflection was still watching me. It got so bad that I covered the bathroom mirror with a towel. It felt stupid, like something out of a horror movie, but it made me feel better. For a little while. But then the dream started. I was always standing in a white room. Nothing in it. Just walls and a floor. And a mirror. A tall, full-length one with an ornate black frame, like the kind you'd see in an old Victorian house. My reflection would be there, of course, but she never did what I did. I'd step left. She'd stay still. I'd blink. She'd stare. Sometimes she'd smile. That tight, knowing smile. Like she knew something I didn't. One night, I dreamt that I reached out to touch the glass, and she grabbed my wrist. Her hand was cold and dry and impossibly strong. I woke up gasping, with a bruise on my arm. That's when I told Julia. She's a friend from college, now a therapist. We still meet for coffee once a week. I told her the dreams, the mirror, the delays. Left out the bruise. She listened carefully, sipping her chai latte like she was hiding behind it. "Have you been sleeping?" she asked. "Barely. I'm stressos. Just getting older. Feeling stuck. Feeling disconnected?" I nodded. She leaned forward. "It's probably dissociation. Not uncommon. Especially around birthdays, milestones. The mirror's a symbol. You're confronting your identity." I tried to believe her. I really did. But the next time I looked into the mirror, really looked, I saw her smile again. And I knew she wasn't just a symbol. She was watching. And she was waiting. Things got worse quickly. I started losing time. I'd look up and realize 2 hours had passed. I'd find texts I didn't remember sending. Once, I came home and the oven was on, something half-cooked inside. I don't cook. Another time, I found a receipt in my coat pocket, from a bookstore I'd never been to. A book I didn't recognize. A title in Latin. De Speculo et Umbra. Of the mirror and the shadow. When I opened it, every page had been blacked out, except one. Page 73. It read, "Once she learns to mimic your movements, she learns to mimic your mind." I threw the book away, but it showed up again the next day. On my kitchen counter. I stopped sleeping altogether. My apartment became a war zone of reflection. Covered mirrors, turned off screens. I even unplugged the microwave because of the shine on its surface. But it didn't help, because now I saw her everywhere. In reflections I didn't expect. The side of a spoon. The glass of a store window. My laptop screen during a Zoom call. Once, I saw her walk away. I was brushing my teeth in the dim light of the bathroom, and as I bent over to spit, she turned and walked out of frame. My reflection left me. I stood there frozen, water dripping from my chin, mouth still full of toothpaste. And I whispered, "Who are you?" The mirror fogged over slowly, like breath on glass. And a message appeared. "I'm what you lost." Julia said I needed to check in. Maybe see someone more clinical. I nodded. Told her I'd think about it. But I didn't. Because the moment I made the appointment, I heard her laugh. Not Julia. The mirror girl. A quiet, dry sound that came from inside my own head. And that night, I blacked out for real. I woke up at 4:12 a.m., sitting in the middle of my living room floor. Candles all around me, arranged in a perfect circle, burning low. The air smelled like dirt and sulfur. My hands were covered in something black and sticky. On the wall, written in what looked like ash, "One must go." I screamed, called Julia. She rushed over, held me while I sobbed. She said, "You need help." I nodded. But inside, something shifted. Something settled. Something smiled. I started avoiding mirrors completely. But it didn't matter. She was in my dreams now every night. And in the waking world, people noticed. "You seem different lately," my coworker said. "You're sharper," my neighbor whispered, eyes narrowed. Even Julia looked at me sideways. "Are you sleeping better?" she asked. "Much," I replied. She tilted her head. "You sound good, but not like yourself." I smiled. "Maybe that's a good thing." She didn't smile back. The last night I saw myself was the night I stopped seeing her. The real me. I was brushing my hair in the bedroom, the only mirror I hadn't covered, when I felt the air shift. Heavier. Colder. And then I saw her. Not in the mirror. Standing behind me. In the room. She was identical. But the way she stood was wrong. Too still. Too confident. She smiled. That awful, knowing smile. I backed away. She stepped forward. We moved in sync, not mirrored, but matched. And then she said it. With my voice. "One must go." I don't remember what happened next. Just glass shattering. Blood. A scream I don't think came from me. And then silence. When I woke up, the apartment was clean. The mirror was gone. No shards. No blood. No sign she'd ever been there. But when I passed by the hallway, I saw something in the dark screen of the TV. Not my reflection. Someone else. Blinking a second too late. Smiling when I didn't. Watching. Sometimes I still see her. In the shimmer of a puddle. In the glare of a turned-off phone. She's there. Waiting. Or maybe she's already here. Because sometimes I wake up in places I don't remember going. Say things I wouldn't say. Hear people call me by a name that isn't mine. And when I look into the eyes of my reflection, I wonder if I'm the one on the outside, or if I'm the one who crossed over, and she's the one living my life now.